asked 15 of the world's best Pokemon TCG players what their 3 top tips are for you to win more games of Pokemon. I have tips here from world champions, international champions, regional champions, Players Cup champions, and multiple worlds finalists, top 4s, top 8s, top 16s, and international finalists too. So whether you just play online, are looking to get your first world invite, or even want to win your first regional championships, I guarantee this video will be helpful to you. So it became very clear listening to these world-class players that if you want to get better at the Pokemon TCG, there are 2 sides of the game that you need to look at. Mental and technical. Both of which are equally as important. Let's start with technical first.
And firstly, you need to play the game. This is my #1 way to improve.
First of all, practice is the most important factor in this.
Being able to consistently play games and get games under your belt.
Dedicating more time to test was the most common technical tip. But that's so obvious, right? Anyone can just grind endlessly on the ladder and expect to get better at Pokemon, right? Wrong.
Don't practice mindlessly. And essentially what I mean by this is when you're playing games, don't just mindlessly grind games, like actually focus on how the games went, why you won, why you lost, and how your deck worked.
They will open your eyes to things that you didn't know were there, or things that may have taken you a while to come to a conclusion of at your own, right?
Instead, you need to dial in your testing. Instead of always testing the good matchups, why don't you test the hard matchups? They're the ones you're going to learn the most from.
And also, don't train a lot against decks that you have an auto win or a super favorable matchup against, because you don't learn a lot from that. Focus on the matchups that are hard and maybe add in some tech cards to help that matchup.
Sam here has an interesting tip.
Play the top decks and matchups against each other. And even though it may not be the decks that you're playing at the next tournament, it's still important to know how the top decks will function and how your opponent, who may be playing that deck, will try to win the game against you.
He says you should test all the meta decks so you know how they all operate, and I think that is fantastic because that will help you win more games against them. A lot of these players also recommended that you get like a sort of testing team of sorts so you can all learn from each other, play all the different decks, and then spot different game plans sooner. This could include coaching as well. Playing the same deck for multiple events is also highly recommended.
My first tip would be lock into one deck. The more practice you get with one thing, the better you will be with it. You will learn tips and tricks along the way. You'll be naturally learning matchups and adapting your play as you practice the same deck, and it makes the most out of your time.
Even if it's not the best deck in format for each event, being able to know a deck inside and out is super helpful.
If you've been practicing with a certain deck for so long, then over the course of 15 rounds, 14 rounds in a tournament, you'll find yourself finding those plays much easier than having to think under high pressure situations, especially when there's stress involved and more involved on the line.
Play to your strengths. And what I mean by that is the best deck in a vacuum for a tournament might not necessarily be the best deck for you to play a given tournament, because if you go in with a tier 2 or tier 1.5 deck that you know really well and that you can play the ins and outs of, and you know every situation that's going to come up with it, and you're less likely to misplay with it, that might do you better in the tournament than playing what is, in air quotes, objectively the best deck.
When you've played hundreds of games with a deck, you would have seen so many different situations that if you get put in one of those situations again, you know instantly what to do or what not to do, and that should hopefully result in some more W's. Not only that, but you are less likely to misplay with a deck you know inside and out versus a deck that you put together at 3 AM the night before regionals that you all think breaks the meta. Trust me, it doesn't. You're gonna misplay with it and you're gonna have a sad time. So do everyone a favor, pick a deck you like and just go. This also leads into knowing your win cons when playing a game. What's the most efficient way for your deck to take its 6 prize cards first?
Always plan out how you're gonna achieve your win condition, whether that's taking 6 prizes or trying to deck your opponent out or something else. When you're trying to take 6 prizes, it's always good to plan out, I'm going to knock out a 3 prizer, a 2 prizer, a 1 prizer, or I'm going to try to knock out 3 2 prizers. Or if your opponent's playing a single prize deck, planning out, which 6 knockouts am I going to take throughout this game. Having better awareness of how you're going to achieve your win condition can help you make the right decisions turn by turn as you progress through a game and ultimately lead you to a victory.
Knowing these gameplay strategies is crucial, and it's not the sort of thing you can learn on your own just by mindlessly grinding the TCGO ladder. Instead, get into a testing group, tracking your testing, and even trying different gameplay strategies to see which ways to win work best. And I cannot stress this enough, when you have a game plan against whatever your opponent's playing, it's very easy to turn those L's into W's, baby. Jeez. Keeping tabs on the meta is another fantastic top tip.
My second tip would be to learn the metagame and be aware of what are the most popular decks right now.
My second tip is to be aware of recent tournament results and understand the metagame.
These days there are so many resources that exist that are perfect for you to learn the meta and see how it's evolving that just wasn't around when I started playing. Such as Limitless, for example, an amazing resource that is not only free, but it compiles all tournament results for you to go and look at, and they even have an online platform, Play Limitless, that tracks the online events too. This makes it super easy to see any trends from the meta and then maybe allow you to predict some as well. Not only Limitless though, you've got PokeStats, Lake of Rage, Omnipoke, Trainer Hill, and many others too. All these resources are just so good for you to be able to track the meta. Right then, so the last tip I've got for you for this mental part of the video is to not be scared to call the judge. Now, this is something I think as a whole community we need to be better at. Doesn't matter what's happened or how minor or major you think it is, just get that hand up and get ready to call a judge. You'll never guess what happened to me at the last regionals I was at. So I basically drew too many cards off for Marnie. I called a judge over and he told me to tell you to hit the like button and subscribe so I can make more of this content, baby. He didn't really, I got a double prize loss. But let's get to the technical part of the video, let's go. Stop blaming your losses on luck.
Don't blame everything on luck, on being unlucky. Just like try to find what the real problem was in the game that you lost.
This was by far the technical tip that came up the most, and quite honestly, I wholeheartedly agree.
Don't blame luck. Obviously, luck plays a role in the game, we all know that, but if you just focus on that, you are losing opportunities to improve. Try thinking about other lines of play that you could have taken. If you do something like that, obviously it's not as fun because it's not nice to think about a game and be like, oh, I lost because I could have done something different, but it's a way to improve. It's a way you're not gonna get better by saying I lost because I flipped tails, but if you think about what you could have done differently, that's a way you can get better.
Like when you lose a game, there are two ways to look at it. You can either sit down and start to cry and woohoo, I dead drew so bad and my opponent drew so well and I'm never gonna play this game again because I'm so bad. Or you can analyze it, dissect it, pick up any and every slight misplay or unoptimal play. Because I guarantee you, in most circumstances, if all those micro decisions were correct, you might have got yourself a cheeky win, or at the very least, a little tie.
I can't tell you the amount of times when I've played a game and then just sat down afterwards and thought a lot about it and realized that I made a mistake on turn 3, which caused me to lose 4 turns later. So it's very important to recognize when that happens.
My second tip is focus on mistakes. Admit your mistakes. Really hone in, and when you're playing the game, like, it can be difficult, but try and just focus as much as you can on, like, not what's going wrong in the game, but why it's going wrong and what you could be doing better.
And I think this is one of the main things that separates the mid-tier players from the high-tier players, is that ability to have all these little micro decisions be correct, or a lot more of them be correct in any given best of 3. So if we want to get from here, and trust me, I'm in that mid-tier as well, if we want to get up here, we have to learn from our mistakes. And you're not going to do that by blaming everything on luck and dead draws, I promise you. Let's do it together. Setting realistic goals was another tip that came up a lot. And so was having fun while playing a TCG, and I think these two go hand in hand.
Of course, set realistic goals for yourself. Are you a newer player that just wants to be competitive in their first season? Or are you a seasoned veteran that seeks to return to the game? There's a huge gap from everyone, and it's all about being realistic with yourself and trying your best to perfect what you're doing.
Is to set an achievable goal. Know where you are as a player, know what your immediate goals are, whether that be your first tournament, Maybe you're trying to break even. Maybe you're trying to go a little bit positive. Maybe you're just trying to win a couple of games. If you've been playing for a little bit, maybe shooting for day 2. Set your goals at an achievable pace, because if you set something way too far beyond your horizon, then you'll get discouraged much easier and, well, upset at yourself if you can't reach those goals.
If you set unrealistic goals like I want to top 8 the next EUIC when you haven't even day 2 the regional yet, you're going to be down here if you don't do that.
And finally, I just want to touch on fun. You know, it's something that typically we do take a little bit for granted, but as you get to play and you start to hit those milestones and achievements, as you begin to put expectations and pressure on yourself, you'll start to make it really, really hard on yourself as well. And just, unfortunately, far less enjoyable.
Income SMART goals. SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timed. I want you to go and do a little research on SMART goals, and then for you at home, I want you to set some of them for your up and coming season. So if it's your goal to top 8 a regional, build some SMART goals around that. If your goal is to get a Worlds invite, build a few SMART goals around that. And I guarantee that not only will you have more fun playing the game, that your performance will get better as well.
If you face an auto loss, beat it anyway. Okay, what do I mean by that? What I mean is, obviously you're not going to win all the time against auto losses, but a lot of people are, conceding too early. Like, I'm not even talking about necessarily about scooping cards up, but they are losing mentally before the game begins. They think, oh, it's an auto loss, or it's a bad matchup, so I'm going to lose, or they think, oh, that's a top player, so I'm going to lose. Or, just they start thinking, once they are down 2 prizes, they start thinking over their head how they're going to explain their loss, instead of actually trying to win the game. If you have a good mental, if you have mental fortitude, you're gonna win games that other people would have lost in the same spot.
I think Stefan raises an excellent point about not giving up on your auto losses. It is so easy to see your opponent flip over a card and you think, damn, there's no way I can win this game, and you can just sort of mentally check out and not even give it your 100%. But I guarantee you, and I promise you now, that if you, next time you play against an auto loss, if you actually try and play to all your outs and know your win cons and your prize mapping, I'd say maybe 3 out of 10 times or 4 out of 10 times, you never know, if your opponent dead draws a little bit or doesn't play optimally, you might be able to sneak some sneaky W's, baby. And tell you what, you're going to be on top of the world. Instead of being down here, like, oh, I hit my auto loss and I lost and I'm so bad. Instead, you're going to be up here being like, yeah, I just beat my auto loss. No one can stop me. Let's get it going, baby. I promise you, you will feel and do a whole lot better for it.
Be patient. It took me 11 years to win my first major.
Another tip is to make sure you are patient. You don't want to be too extreme with your expectations and think you're going to get them just like that. So this, you could argue, is pretty similar to the goal setting, right? Now that's not to say that some people haven't had crazy first or second seasons. I'm sure they have, and I'm sure you've got some on the tip of your tongue now that you're probably thinking there in the comments. What I am saying though is that Rome wasn't built in a day. And I think expecting instant success is just one way to set yourself up to fail. So don't do it.
Pay attention throughout the whole games. Try not to get cheated against.
Right then, so my last tip for you today is to make sure you are vigilant during gameplay. And this works both ways. First way is to be vigilant with your own gameplay. Make sure you're always confirming what your opponent's doing so you don't draw too many cards or anything like this. Keeping a good mind state on the board will make sure you don't get any penalties. We don't want them. But unfortunately, the second half of this coin is to make sure you are vigilant about what your opponent is doing, because there have been a fair few instances recently of unintentional gameplay errors that, if go unnoticed, can sometimes lead to an unfair advantage for your opponent. And we don't want any uphill struggles, we want it to be nice and level. So if you think you see anything that's not 100% right, don't be scared to put your hand up and call that judge. That is what they are there for at the end of the day. So if any of this helped you out, please hit the like and subscribe button for me, okay? And check out this video here if you want to see me take on our current world champion with a $5 deck from Fiverr.